We're all on this journey together, whether we realize it or not. And when we start to encounter problems, whether they're in a relationship or our life in general, we start to go and hunt for answers. And that's exactly why the self help space in general is such a booming market. There's so much phenomenal advice that's out there ready for you, right at your fingertips, 24 hours a day. But have you ever felt that your partner is actively standing in the way of progress because you've discovered these new tips, these new tricks, these new tools to use? And if they would just get on board, then everything would be fine, everything would work its way out. I certainly have. And I'm going to tell you about how I actively used self help advice as a weapon against my wife. Years back, I had this sense that my marriage was struggling. There wasn't anything overt happening, it wasn't some major blow ups, but it was disconnected. It was lackluster, maybe. I don't know. It certainly didn't live up to the Disney dream that we're all fed, right? Whether that's right or wrong, my marriage just felt off, even if I didn't have the words to really describe it. But I certainly had no intention on ending my marriage. My wife is my person, like, she is my world. So I did what most people do. I went out hunting the interwebs for answers. I read books, I listened to podcasts, I watched endless streams of YouTube videos. I scoured the message boards talking to other people who were in the similar situations that I was, feeling the same kinds of things that I was. And in the moment, I really felt like I was trying to save my marriage. My effort was pointed to do one thing and one thing only, and that was to serve the thing that mattered to me so much, which was my wife and my marriage. But looking back on it, I was trying to use these tools to try to change my wife. And that's an entirely different thing. But in the moment, it didn't feel that way because this advice was fantastic. There was a lot of stuff talking about communication. There was stuff about intentionality to varying degrees. There was talks about tactics, what date nights or what trips or what things we could do together to help improve various areas of the marriage. Many of the things are things that I talk about now on this channel. And much of that advice was very good. And I started to be very consistent and I would say aggressive at following these things. I would go out of my way to communicate every little detail because more is better, right? No. I would open up and be honest and vulnerable, and I would do all of these things that individually, when you look at them as their own entity, they were the correct thing to do. And they still are the correct thing to do. And they're still things that I currently practice in my marriage. And from the outside, everything that I was doing, all of the advice that I was following, it was all leading me to the same conclusion, which is I'm finally doing what husbands are supposed to be doing. This is what being a good husband looks like. So imagine my confusion when nothing changed. And we're not talking about over a day or three or over a week or two. We're talking about over months. Nothing was changing, not even a little bit. And looking at it, we were doing all the things. We were communicating more. We were being more upfront and honest. We were spending more time together. Yet there was no intimacy in that. There was no real connection that was happening with that. It was us going through the motions, I think, in many ways. And so I was putting in all of this effort and I wasn't seeing any of the results from it that I was expecting, that the books told me that I would see, that the podcast said that I would feel, that the gurus said that I should expect. None of it came. And I was so confused. I was so hurt. I was so disappointed. And honestly, I was pretty resentful and angry because I thought that those two things were supposed to go together. I thought that if I put in the effort, if I did these things, then I was going to get this outcome. It was an do A, get B type situation. And that just wasn't my experience. And that led me to start feeling very resentful, first about the situation, and then after overthinking it, towards my wife. I started to become very resentful towards Esme all the times where I was trying to do the thing that the book said and she kind of shut it down. All the times that I tried to open a conversation, but she got a work call and couldn't engage. All the times that she got engrossed with the kids instead of putting her attention onto me. So I started to ask these questions to myself. Why isn't she doing the same thing? Why isn't she responding the way that she's supposed to? Why do I feel like I'm the only one that actually puts in the effort here? And keep in mind, in this time, I really felt like I was right. I really felt like I had these answers because look at the whole host of experts in this field all saying that what I'm doing is what is supposed to be done. And so then a very dangerous thought started to creep in. And that was, well, I know that I'm right. And if I'm right, that must mean that Esme is wrong. And right then and there, that thought coming into my mind, that thought taking root into my heart, that weaponized my effort into resentment. It turned my love into pressure. It turned my honesty into a hidden contract that she had no idea she was taking part of. And so from that point forward, my effort lacked that honesty of really trying to help, and it instead became a hidden test. I would practice the things that I learned in those books and in those podcasts, and if she responded what I believed to be the appropriate way, then she passed. But if she didn't respond in the way that I had expected her to, then she failed. And the really cruel thing is that she had no idea that she was even taking part in any of this. But to me, that didn't matter because I was going to grade her anyways. And I had already decided what the right answer was long before she ever had a chance to utter a single word. And before too long, she started to take note that there was an extra layer of pressure that was getting put on her, that there was more to the conversation than what I was leading on. She started to feel the weight of those expectations that I was quietly carrying. She was feeling the weight of those hidden contracts sitting on her shoulders, even though they were never explicitly stated. And the outcome of all of that was that our marriage got substantially worse. But you see, it wasn't the advice that was wrong. It wasn't. The tools were still effective. All of those things that I was putting into practice, they all mattered. Communication matters, honesty matters, forthrightness matters. The problem wasn't the tools that I was using, it wasn't the information that was guiding me. The problem was what I was bringing and attaching to it. My communication had lost all honesty. I weaponized it. I wasn't communicating to connect any longer. I was communicating to extract. I wasn't coming to her with honesty. I was coming to her to make a trade. I think in many ways, I was treating every interaction as a transaction rather than an opportunity to connect with her. And those were the contracts that I wrote. I give you honesty, you give me closeness. I open up to you, you become more vulnerable with me. I put in effort for you, you give me more intimacy. And while nothing that I ever read taught me this, at least not directly, this was very much ingrained in my thinking at the time. And that may be how transactions work, but it certainly is not how relationships work. Connection is not something that you can extract from another person. You're never going to negotiate your way into intimacy. And all of this continued to erode our marriage quietly for months, and we both felt it. And I remember finally when all of this broke, Esme and I were sitting in the kitchen. The kids had not been in the house, which for you parents out there know how glorious that feeling is. And we just started to talk. It wasn't anything that was prompted. We didn't plan on it, certainly. But for some reason, for the first time in as long as I could remember, I wasn't trying to extract an answer from her. I wasn't trying to lead her to some foregone conclusion that I had already determined was correct. For the first time in forever, I showed up to that conversation without any expectation of an outcome. We just talked about everything, about nothing. We chatted about life. We chatted about our dreams, disappointments, about hurt, resentment. We chatted about everything and nothing all at once. And we had no expectation of where this conversation was going to lead. But still, somehow, at the end of this conversation, both her and I were in tears. And not because we touched on some magic topic that fixed our marriage in one fell swoop. It was because for the first time in neither of our memory did we have an interaction where we both felt heard, we both felt seen, we both felt connected to each other, not for some promise of who we are going to be in the future, but we felt connected to each other in the moment of who we are right then and there. And that's powerful because it's stripped of all this expectation. It's rooted in that feeling of who you are right now is enough. I'm excited to see who you become, but right now I see you. Right now I love you. And even though neither one of us remember every little detail of that conversation, we certainly know what changed from that conversation. Because it was there that I stopped trying to control the outcome. It was that conversation where I stopped trying to lead her to my answer. I stopped deciding ahead of time what this conversation needed to produce. The conversation at that point was allowed to be something that we discovered together. And the difference in that approach, even though it may seem small, it may seem insignificant, allowed our communication of thought to become communication of love. And it turned basic communication of logistics into true human connection. And I think that's what we're all searching for. Because the truth is that communication doesn't become connection just because you say more words. Communication becomes connection in part when both people feel safe enough to show up honestly as they are right then in that moment without the worry of feeling judged, without the worry of feeling like something is being expected of them or that they're being led somewhere that they don't particularly want to go. Safety dies when communication becomes tests. It dies when honesty turns into hidden contracts. When you show up honestly with who you are in that moment and you allow them to show up with who they are in that moment as well, that's how safety grows. And that shift for me was massive. And even though it took me a long time to realize it, it's one that I internalized very deeply, deeply enough that I'm here talking to you all about it. I still follow a lot of that self help advice, but I don't weaponize it anymore. I still communicate. I still tell the truth. I still open the door to conversation, but I stopped deciding what it was that she was supposed to do with it. I stopped bringing my expectations of how she should respond to something, and I just allow her to respond to it. And with that shift, communication has become connection again. Not because we say more, but because we stopped trying to control the outcome. So, my question for you all is, are you accidentally using self help knowledge to push your partner to change? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you all have to say. Cheers.